on the road again. We can't wait to get on the road again. Telling stories to our family and our friends. We can't wait to get on the road again. On the road again. We can't wait to get on the road again. Telling stories to our friends. We can't wait to get on the road again.
Welcome to our monthly AAA podcast, Affinity, Allie, and Annette on the road to good storytelling, with our host, Allie Spooner and Annette Mori. And I just want to say happy Pride Month. What a great way to kick off the month with a podcast with Max here.
Absolutely. Welcome and happy Pride Month again. I hope everybody will have a wonderful month. I'm Allie Spooner, and I write with Affinity. With over 40 published titles, I touch on many genres, from romance to paranormal. I have numerous series, and lately I've focused more on teaching myself to write shorter stories and standalone books. I hope you enjoy our podcast and have an opportunity to meet some authors new to you or learn more about your favorites. We appreciate your support and invite you to visit Affinity Rainbow Publications to check out our books. Most recently, as of yesterday, we have also added several new titles and have another 15 coming onto KU, so keep an eye out for those. You've got some fantastic books to take advantage of there. So welcome and enjoy.
Great. Thanks, Allie. And I'm Annette Mori, also with Affinity Rainbow Publications. I'm pretty sure I've settled into a brand that includes a sort of quirky and conventional style of writing. And I know undoubtedly, and I absolutely know that sometimes gives my publisher a little bit of fits because some of my books are kind of out there. I still feel like I have a lot to learn from others, which is why we're so excited to bring other authors on board that we can chat with so we can learn something from them, because you just never stop learning. And I've been very fortunate to have a small but very loyal following and surprising recognition on some of my novels.
All right, so each month we'll invite a special guest to join us as we discuss various topics of interest to writers and readers. We'll invite our guests to do a short reading and then follow with questions on the featured topic, while encouraging them to do at least one giveaway to our audience.
This month, we'll be talking about books that are set into the future, especially those that are part of a universe of stories. And I'm gonna admit to stealing that from you, because when you started talking about the 4-point universe, I thought that's kind of perfect. That's a perfect way to describe, your books, and also I will talk later about some of my books that are part of a universe. And so Max Ellendale, we're very excited to have her here. I'm a huge, almost embarrassing super fan of her 4-point universe. And we were talking earlier, and she has this other universe of stories, which I hope she'll talk about as well. And I haven't read them yet. And so now I'm so excited to go back and binge those, because they're urban fantasy and have some, were folks and other stuff that's really kind of cool. So I'm pretty interested in that. I'm also especially a fan of her books because the 4-point universe is set in the Pacific Northwest, and we were also chatting about that. And I was sharing some surprising things to Max, which she may or may talk about later.
Following our podcast, we'll upload to a newly created YouTube channel and hope you consider subscribing so you never miss a future podcast.
So let me introduce Max to you. Max, who goes by the pronouns of she, her, grew up just outside of New York City, spending most of her formative years outdoors creating wild ghost hunts with neighborhood kids. That sounds like fun. Setting booby traps to capture unwitting family members, and building clubhouses on top of 10-foot walls. Wow. Okay. Max wrote her first story at the age of 12 and titled it Circles of Friendship. Through the years, Max has written several short stories and poems, all of which met the wrath of the not good enough, I'm sure that wasn't true, monster, and ended in fiery demise. Max regained her confidence when she began writing scholarly articles and research these on her first trip through graduate school. It took several years for her to break the habit of the formal writing that marred her creativity. Max writes primarily LGBTQ plus sci-fi, fantasy, crime thriller, and romance stories. Max describes her women-loving women novels as edgy romance and crime thrillers about women rising from the ashes of their experiences and thriving in the context of love and relationships.
Oh, that sounds so wonderful. So without further ado, Max, if you're ready, take it away.
All right, thank you all. I'm going to be reading a piece, I guess a snippet out of my latest book, Jagged. The reason I chose this is because there's a quote in here that I really liked, the way it just came out of Jagged's mouth. So we're going to start kind of in the middle of a scene. Characters have just arrived together. There's a little frivolity in the beginning. And now Frankie, who is a minor character and also Jagged's sister, are going off into the back room to talk about some art. Plastic drop cloths covered the floors, leaving bare the huge brick face wall and 3 ratty old wood-planked paneled ones. I stepped into the center of the big space and turned in a slow circle. Mav did a good job exposing the wood. She did. Frankie popped her hands on her hips, and the metal of her chain-link belts clinked. It's going to make a great showroom. It is. You sure you want me to cover the whole brick wall? I moved toward my gear and shrugged out of my jacket. Yeah, work your magic. Street up the rest of this place. She stepped back toward the door, her eyes wandering around the room as if attempting to envision something. Finally owned this place, so I wanted ours, you know? Yeah. We've come a long way from sleeping in a puppy pile in the alley behind it, she said, her hands on her hips as she watched me. Remember Winona pulling us off the streets and saying some shit like, you want to sleep here? You gotta work here, and made us scrub salon chairs? I smirked at the salty memory of days gone. Oh, yeah. Best meal I ever had after that, though. I know. Her tilted smile said more than her words did in the moment. I plucked out the black can of spray paint, shook it out of idle habit, and I think I have an idea, I said. Good. She pointed to the respirator mask in the crate. Don't be a martyr. You're unfunny. I snatched the mask, still speckled with the wear and tear of my previous work. Meaning you were once funny, and now you're not. Ha! She flipped me off, then melted into a cocky grin. Ever think you'd be tagging with a badge and a gun strapped to your belt? I cocked a brow at her, extended my left arm, and sprayed a straight line across the wall for no particular reason. Go away. She laughed at me. Okay, bye. Bye. I grumbled and pulled the respirator mask over my face. I turned to face the exposed brick wall in all its bareness. Ever since my early teens, I could barely resist the call of a naked urban wall. Dingy and wearing the stains of the people who slept under it, peed on or ignored for its existence, I felt compelled to leave my mark. I would make it so that everyone would look at it, so that they could catch a glimpse of something a bit more than the inner world that stole them so far from connecting. The thing about blank walls themselves so often captured the inner world of most people anyway. Frankie preferred bold colors and designs that made a statement. Her style, as brazen as her tattoo work, would be a suitable home here. With my mask fixed in place, I took to the task that calmed my insides and connected me to nothing save for the colors and smell of the paint. Nearly 2 decades defacing property, now only to be encouraged to commit the same acts. A mixed message caught in time. When I was a kid, I dreamt that I was destruction, that everywhere I went, I left a path of devastation in my wake. I was a residue left behind like spray paint trapped in my fingernails after a long night of tagging. Even if I created beautiful, illegal art, my nails always gave away the artist. I ended up in juvie because of my nails, and because of the damaged trail that followed after me. I lost myself in time, in the hiss of the nozzle and the crack of a fresh seal when I opened the new can. With no plans, no predicted vision, I melded with my work, guided only by the fluid movement of my arm and the support of the rickety ladder under me. My phone rang an hour later after I'd covered the wall with the majority of my design. I'd always prided myself on the speed of my work. Getting run out of places on the daily meant moving fast, and that was something I was good at. With my less painted hand, I pulled out my phone and swiped to answer when I saw Zay's name. Yeah, Moreno has a connection with the ME who did the autopsies of the 2 Vicks from 2019. We can meet up with her tonight. Who is it? Why does your voice sound so funny? It's Ainsley Monson. Know her? Yeah, I know her. I glanced at the wall in front of me while slicing a deep yellow across the bold pink I'd laid before it. Didn't really need Moreno for that connection. Yeah, well, whatever he did got us an audience with her. Can you make it? What time? 8. Downtown. All good, yeah. Later. Bye. Bye. I pocketed my phone and stepped back to take a look at my work. It wasn't done, which annoyed me, but I reminded myself that this wasn't a tag. I set down my gear, wiped my hand on Frankie's shirt, then grabbed my jacket before heading out front. I think we can stop there. I don't know if it was 5 minutes, though.
It's okay.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. That was a good reading.
It was a great reading. And,
Yeah.
you know, I remembered, I just read this book, so I remembered some of the descriptors. The ones that really stood out to me was the puppy pile. I could see that, you know,
Yeah.
it was, you know, I think your descriptors are so amazing because they use many senses, not just, you know, they really create that picture in your mind that you can actually see and sort of almost feel and hear and taste. Yeah. So very good.
That's-
Nice job.
Thank you.
All right, Annette, are you ready?
I am. So today just released Love Hacks, which is the second book in the Next Generation's spin-off series. And I've talked about this before, but the spin-off series is actually part of the whole organization universe. And it's set 20 years from today. And the main characters are the children of the original women from this badass organization called this badass covert organization called The Organization. So I'm gonna just start right from the beginning and gonna go with what I think is about 5 minutes as well. And I almost thought maybe I should just let the narrator Heidi Binhammer just play the press button, but no, I won't do that. I'll actually do the reading for you. So this is the very first chapter, and the main character is Joy Stiles, and she is the daughter of the 2 main leads in the very first book called Asset Management, Tony and Shar. So here we go. Joy Stiles rotated her neck. Spending so much time on her supercharged laptop was not healthy. She knew that, but couldn't seem to break away. She'd been in a nonstop battle with the mysterious hacker who had gained her grudging respect. It was time to call her mother because now this person was popping into her attempts to hack the NSA. Absently tying her long red hair back, Joy reached for her phone and made a video call. Hey, Mama T. I think I might need your expertise to hack the NSA. Tony's smiling face appeared on the screen. Hon, the NSA is a tough nut to crack. So why do you want to whack that hornet's nest? Her other mother slid into the chair next to Tony. Is this a private genius to genius conversation, or can I get in on the fun? I never get to see you anymore, Char lamented. You might get bored, but you're always welcome to join us. Actually, I'm glad you jumped on the call. You probably need an update anyway. So, in answer to your question, Mama T, I was poking around on the dark web and picked up some disturbing chatter, Joy answered. You sure that isn't some nutty conspiracy theory crap? Tony asked. That's why I wanted to hack the NSA. Now I'm more convinced than ever that I found at least some kernel of truth. Joy leaned back in her chair before turning when Randy poked her head into the room. Hey, Joy. Alina, Maria, and I are going out to get some pizza and have a few beers. Do you want to join us? Oh, whoops. Hi, Aunt Char and Aunt Tony. Root beer, she amended. Char and Tony laughed. I'm pretty sure the entire world knows you're not having root beer, Randy, including your moms. We aren't that old to forget what college was like. Besides, I'd be disappointed if Joy hadn't created fake IDs for you, Tony said with a smile. Char playfully nudged Tony's shoulders. Goddess, Tony, do you want the kids to turn into delinquents? I swear, knowing something and blatantly expressing your approval are two very different things. Tony held up her hands. What? It's a crime not to use the talents we've been given by the goddess. And fortunately, Joy has many talents. Joy answered Randy, I'll meet you guys later. Pete's Pizza? Yeah, but you better not bail on us again. Shit, if you could have sex with your new laptop, you would, Randy scolded. How's that neck of yours doing? Joy waved her hand. Go. I want to talk with my moms. And don't ever say something so gross like that again. I'll be there. Lena told me to tell you she saw your crush there the other day, Randy teased. Randy bounced out of the Joy's room and Joy returned to her conversation. Sorry about that. Crush? Shar asked. Don't get your hopes up. She doesn't even know I exist despite spending the last year in the same graduate program. Honey, you're a beautiful, talented, brilliant, kind young woman. I'm sure she knows you exist. There isn't a man or woman alive who could resist those gorgeous green eyes. Maybe I should have taught you more than how to hack into any secure space. Catching someone's eye is easier than avoiding detection when we enter those fortified sites. Now you make that an offer, Joy grumbled, but she was more interested in solving her current dilemma, which had nothing to do with her non-existent love life. Can we get back to the reason I called? Of course, honey, Tony said. There's this other hacker who keeps popping into my computer, leaving irritating messages whenever I poke around in the dark web, especially when I entered this site with the concerning intel. Then when I tried to crack the security code in the NSA, she stuck her nose into my business again, Joy explained. Her? Interesting. How do you know it's a woman? Shar asked. She sent me this animation of a beautiful dragon with long eyelashes, Joy groaned. See who does that? She continued her explanation. I'm describing a dragon as beautiful. No wonder I can't get a date. Mama T is a cool nerd, and I'm just your run-of-the-mill geek hiding behind my computer and letting my skin get pasty. You'll thank the universe for that when you turn 50 and you've no wrinkles on your skin, Tony joked. Not funny, Mama T. Okay, I'll stop there. So there we go. Love hacks.
Great series.
All right. Max, are you ready for some questions?
I am.
I think the readers are just dying to know a bunch of things, as am I. So as I remember, the 4-point universe, it spans a couple of decades, right? Is that correct? Did I read that correctly as I was reading the books? And then
Yes.
some of the books happen later in the future.
Mhm.
So tell us, I thought this was a challenging thing for me, and I wonder how you looked at it. Writing challenging books that aren't necessarily sci-fi, but more thriller, but that happen in the future. And how do you envision what that future is going to be like? Technology, all kinds of different things. How did you go about, dealing with some of those challenges?
It's kind of liberating in a sense. It was also an accident.
Okay.
After I think it was in 4-point, I did not intend for the 4-point book to turn into a trilogy at all. It was supposed to be a standalone, which is why it's kind of traditional size and like it follows more of a traditional pathway, so to speak, other than having a lesbian or a sapphic romantic lead. I had the epilogue take place 4 years in the future to show how people were, how everyone ended up. Maggie and Sally married, Sally a teacher / lecturer, Ben getting back together with his wife and having a kid, Olivia, who was 4 years old, and Sally had a connection with, because Olivia was pivotal in her recovery in life.
Right.
So I accidentally fast forwarded me into it started out just being 4 years ahead, which is marginally, it didn't really matter that much.
Right.
Because 4 years is 4 years. Other than that, the kid appeared at 4 years old.
Right.
Then as it went forward, I realized I had to kind of keep track of this, and I needed a technique of how to keep track. So the technique is the kids. So if you'll notice, as you go forward, you have Olivia's age, Finley's age, all the siblings that are young, or, however old they are is how much time has passed. So that was my little technique of figuring it out.
Okay.
So having a book, having a crime thriller style books set in the future is great because it's liberating. You don't have to worry about the tech of now. You don't have to be accurate. You can make it a little sci-fi. It offers the ability to suspend belief in a different way. So it's kind of liberating. And my origins were genre fiction in the sense of writing urban fantasy and sci-fi novels. That's what the first things that I wrote. The first book I ever published was a middle grade book about witches. And then that was like my graduate school thesis. And the second series the first book that I ever published as an adult traditionally was, urban fiction with werewolves and vampires and things. So that's my origins. And when I was teaching writing, it was teaching the craft of genre fiction to college students, and undergrads. So I use that to help, propel myself forward. It did get a little wildly out of control. So I decided to make fun of myself when I wrote Jawbreaker and just really said it, 1,000 years in the future, I don't even know, and made superheroes flying and standing on the Space Needle. It was an alternative universe.
Yeah.
But I did futuristic alternative universe too. So that one of the challenges, yes, keeping track of how much time has passed, because when the 4-Point universe started, Sally was 33. And then I'm like, oh crap, she's not 34 just because I've written the 5th book a year later. So keeping track of things like that those were the unique challenges in that sense. But I think it was very useful too, because you don't have to be accurate right now.
Yeah. That's true. That does free it a little bit. So I'm going to skip to one of our last questions because I think it ties into what you just said about, using the kids. Plotter or pantser?
I am a pantser 100% of the time, except when it comes to the characters, because I write the fiction that I write is character driven. It's not about the plot. I don't sit down and plan out, what's going to happen, when's going to happen. I don't do outlines. I write very linear from beginning to end. And how I do that is I create the character because it's the people that matter. Giving away my trade secrets now. Character driven fiction is the fiction that wins. You have to care about the leads. You have to care about them. The plot doesn't matter if the character is strong. If you go back and look into some, like the oldest stories out there, let's take Sylvia Plath's The Bell Jar. What was that even about? No one knows. Was there a plot? No. It was just about Esther and her struggle with mental health issues and Sylvia Plath's own personal story. We cared about these characters, these people in the story. There was no plot. What? There wasn't anything going on. Like literally nothing happened. And if you think, even William Faulkner, nothing is happening. A dead person is traveling in a coffin across the country to be buried. Nothing is happening, but we care about that character and the people around them. And Hemingway was the same way. Writing The Farewell to Arms was during World War I.
Yeah.
It's a war. It's not that special. We know how it ends. It was the people that we cared about. So, so it create the characters first. I give them an identity. I sit with a sense of them until I feel them. I'm connected with them. And then I put them on a page and see how they tell their story. So I don't plot. I don't, plan the plot. Even with the serial.
Yeah, your characters are definitely, that's true. It's a huge strength, but I will say though, you have some pretty exciting plots too, as I remember. Because there's, serial killers and taking through those stories, and the characters go through some horrendous experiences. So there is some, heart pounding plot happening there.
It's true. And that comes from the character, because I create the villain the same way I create the mains, the protagonist. So Scott Alexander Clark, he was created. And when I knew something needed to happen now, because you feel it, right? The energy's coming. What would Scott do? What would he do? What would the serial killer do? And how would he do it? What happened to him in his life that he would recreate in his victims? So instead of planning it, I follow the tension. I follow the characters, because the villains evolve or devolve the same way as the protagonists. So I let them lead. I let my connection to them lead.
Interesting.
Yeah, never do I. I know how I want the feeling of the book to end. That's as far ahead as I go. I know what that final emotion, the final sense is in each book, and that's what I work toward. I know what that last moment should feel like to myself and to my readers, and that's such a weird
And
thing.
as I recall, I don't believe any of your books was not a happily ever after, which
Right.
is,
Yes, they all are, at least in the majority of the respect, because
yeah.
so many times I'm so unsatisfied when I'm reading because of how it ends.
Mm.
Um, and especially when you're reading romance or
Right,
crime
exactly.
thriller, you want a resolution, even if it's not perfect,
Yes,
you
doesn't have to
know,
be perfect, but it has to be,
earned.
satisfying. Yeah.
Yes, earned and satisfying. And I don't know if you've ever read like The Grapes of Wrath, for example.
Yes.
What an
Mhm.
incredible story.
Mhm.
And then it just ends, and you're like, absolutely not. Where's the sequel? I need to know what happens when they get to where they're going, you know.
Right. Yeah.
And we do know because
Oh my
history.
gosh, that's
Yeah.
true. That's
Yeah.
true. I
Yeah.
love John Steinbeck. He was one of my favorite writers
Okay.
as
Yeah.
a youngster.
Yeah. So it's like that, like our origin of reading. It's that I need to know. I want to have a satisfying ending, and an ending that feels right to me. And to them, to the characters, because one of my readers, or many of them, often joke that I have an apartment building in my head, and each of the characters has their own apartment, and they live there like a dorm. Uh, so they earn their place in the apartment building of my characters in my head. So
Right.
it kind of feels that way. I can just visit
Yeah.
them at the time.
Allie, you're a character driven writer too.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you do have plots, obviously, but I think first and foremost is your characters. That's what people remember. They remember your
Yeah.
characters. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And remember how the books made us feel.
Yeah.
A year from now,
Yes.
that's it.
Mhm.
That's what I know. I
Maya
remember
Angelou.
that book. Yes, yes. I don't remember the specifics, but I definitely remember how it
Yeah.
made me feel. The first book I ever read cover to cover was Night by I don't know if it's Ellie or Eli Wiesel. It was about a recount of the Holocaust.
Oh,
And I was 14. I never really read any younger. Neurodiversity wins, most of the time when you're young. And I was
yeah.
able to buy my way through middle school to high school. That was the first book I ever read. And I don't remember a thing about it except how it made me feel.
Yeah.
And that was it. And I'm going to go back and read it because it's me. So
Good.
it was like that sort of thing. It was always about how it made me feel. The only books I really remembered were um, written by She Who Shall Not Be Named. So those, because I read them multiple times in movies, multiple times as a
Mm,
teenager. So
mm.
young adult teenager. Yeah.
One of the things that we talk about frequently about it takes a special talent to incorporate romance, especially into edgy romance. What tricks do you have to, or have you used to do this effectively?
Mhm.
To get the edgy piece in there, you got to put something at risk. Something's got to be at risk in order for it to be edgy. A romance for the sake of romance isn't worth it to me. There's got to be something to lose. If you take Sally and Maggie, for example, in the trilogy, Sally had her life to lose, and Maggie had everything that she had earned of her own determination to lose. Nora and Caroline had everything to lose. We keep going on and on.
Yeah.
Uh, all of them, they all had something to lose, and what it was the risk that they took in order to make something work. And in that sense, it just kind of it works for them, or they've all had suffered loss of something in the past. And
Mhm.
because many of my books have been described as phoenix stories, people
Yes.
rising from the
Yeah.
ashes.
Mhm.
First time I've heard that, I was at a book signing, never even knew what they were talking about. But why do you write phoenix books on purpose? I don't know what is that. No idea. I guess so. But
Yeah.
I am a therapist. I'm a mental health counselor by nature. That's the only stories that I know.
Yeah.
So the edgy part of romance is people have to have something to lose. There's also a sub-universe that's a play on words. I guess a sub universe in the 4-point universe where there's some BDSM relationships in there
Yes.
in
Uh-huh.
Solanum and No Cherry. Um, and the same type of thing there. People come from where they come from. You can make it edgy and kinky, or you can make it edgy and risky and worth it in the end. I think the characters that epitomize that the most are Anita and Marita from the book titled Anita,
Yeah.
where Anita's been through the most, so to speak.
Yeah.
And the risks that, she pushes Marita so far away
Right.
because she can see the risks. She can see it. She's not the type of person just to tumble for the sake of tumbling. And yeah, that's what makes it edgy is what you have to lose when you engage, when you make this decision to step into something.
Yeah, your sub that's an interesting. Would you say sub universe?
Subgenre, I mean, sub-universe of the universe, yes.
I like that terminology, sub universe. Yes.
Yeah.
You actually write that quite well. Particularly for somebody who I don't generally go looking for that, but I'm not turned off by it. Unless it's represented in a way that does turn me off, which yours did not at all. It was written beautifully. In fact, you write some very beautiful. I noticed one in Jagged, and I was thinking to myself that I remembered your books and they were very character driven and all of that, but I didn't remember because it had been a while since I had read the previous books. And I was like, wow, I don't remember her love scenes being so beautiful and creating such emotion, which this one did and I don't know which scene it was. I can just say that it created that beautiful emotion, which I thought, wow, so now I need to go back and read the whole series again to say, did she do this before and I just missed it because the characters were so interesting that I got involved in that versus this sort of love story. But anyway.
Yeah, it can vary. It can vary.
Yeah.
It really, the characters are so unique. Each is different, especially when it comes to sex scenes or love scenes. Yeah.
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 Well, that is kind of a segue into the next question. Regarding sex scenes, what's your preference? Fade to black or doors wide open? Sounds like there's definitely some doors open.
There's doors always open, but I also do like fade to black. I like both. I like a balance because if it's all doors wide open, it can get daunting, unless you're writing erotica. But if you do all fade to black, it can be unsatisfying. But life is about both. Life is about those moments of passion, and life is about closed door moments too. And Sally's character in the first couple of books, she's an unreliable narrator. So if I had to rewrite the trilogy from another character's perspective, a lot of things would be different. There still is a question of what's true and what isn't. But if you pay attention to Sally, it's in her perspective. So all of the scenes that were passionate, erotic, kinky, messy, were wide open. But when there was a lovemaking scene, the doors were shut because that's what Sally wanted. She did not like the softer scenes being, open. Those were fade to black for her, or she faded us to black. I may not have faded the scene, but she did. We tumbled into a round of lovemaking. That's a fade to black.
Yeah.
In a less shut the door kind of way.
Mm-hmm.
So it really depends on the character. Jagger in the most recent, Jagger is much more private than the other characters, much more reserved, much more specific. And she doesn't live a life, led by sexuality the way some of the other characters are. It wasn't something that she necessarily was interested in at any given time. It was more reactive for her. So what we saw was a bit different because Jagger is a little bit different and Jagged is a little bit different. Yeah. So I favor both depending on the characters, where they lead. There will be novels that I write in this universe that are fully fade to black just because that's the character.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
I
thought it was interesting that the other main character in Jagged was neurodiverse, yet good for you that you portrayed her as being a very sexual being and enjoying sex,
Yes.
which is somewhat novel. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
it's I've written one neurodiverse character, and same thing. Even though it took her a while to sort of, but she wanted that sexual experience, and
Yeah.
same with Down syndrome characters. I mean, nobody represents them as being sexual beings, and I did. It's like,
Right.
nope.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and Clementine, she's on the autism spectrum. It's different for everyone. There a lot of what I've read, and again, I don't read a lot of sapphic romance. I don't right now. So a lot of what I have read in other places kind of pigeonholes, autism spectrum disorder and characters who are neurodiverse as kind of similar. When it's a spectrum for a reason, everybody's a little bit different. You might not even know that somebody's on the spectrum. You might not even know that somebody has ADHD, OCD, mental health conditions,
Right,
developmental
exactly.
disability. So, for Clem, we got to see the things she struggles with for the most part, and we got to see the things that she does not struggle with
Right.
at all. She might not like to be tickled at all. It will make her angry and punch
Right.
somebody
Right.
in reaction, not on purpose. But she's all about the sex. She's totally down for that.
Yeah.
Where, and you see Jagger, who doesn't really like much. She doesn't like to be touched very much. She
Right.
doesn't
Right.
like, except by the people who it's acceptable with, like with a little kid, Reagan, totally fine. Reagan could do whatever. She can hang off of her hair if she wanted to, and it would not bother her. But everyone else is very cautious with her because they know she's communicated her needs or not. And while Clementine is very forward about having a diagnosis of autism or being a person who considers themselves autistic, Jagger doesn't. Jagger doesn't know at all. I know because I wrote her,
Right.
but
Yeah.
doesn't make it to the page because she doesn't know.
Yeah.
And
But
people,
she's written that way. I mean, I could tell that she was on the spectrum for sure. I mean,
yeah, definitely, and more with the with ADHD characteristics of neurodiversity in that aspect. And then we see little Phoebe, who at that point I think is 12. So that's how
Yeah.
much time has passed in the
Right.
universe
Right.
from when
Right.
Phoebe was born to
Yeah.
Phoebe. I think she's 12. And we saw Phoebe early on. Phoebe was planned as being a child with autism. It depends. I say with autism or autistic, depending. Some people in the community prefer autistic. Some people say with autism. I will go with
Or some people say neurodiverse or whatever.
neurodiverse versus
Yeah.
neurodivergent.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
whatever.
There's lots of them. Mhm.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, having Phoebe in there, having Clementine in there, yeah. So the sex piece really is character dependent, I would say.
Any consistent themes that we're going to find in your books?
I think mainly that Phoenix situation where people are, the books are usually starting as close to the end as you can, in that Kurt Vonnegut kind of way, where it's after the ashes have fallen. It is the Phoenix piece where people are arriving to the page, having had stuff happen to them, feeling lost in the world. They all have backstories. They all have places where they've come from. You're never going to find a story written by me where the character has had an average upbringing with an average life with average grades and average. You're never going to find that because it doesn't really exist. But everybody it comes from a place where they've experienced something in their life, and it's about growing beyond what they've been through, stopping the pattern of survival and moving into thriving, making active choices. And that was what was true for Jagger. Jagger was kind of like following about, just doing what she thought was right because that's what the world dictated for her. That's what seemed like the next right thing. But she started to realize that she's got to do what she likes and make decisions for herself and, follow through with that. And if she falls, she falls. If she flies, she flies. So you will always see people who have been through something. That's a theme. And I think the only other theme is the darkest psychology you can imagine. in a sense where there are things that I've written that are darker that I haven't published yet because they don't really fit into this universe. But the darkest of dark psychology. I mean, the serial killers the serial killer that I created, these deviants that I've created are based off real things. They're not, it's based off my experience working in these fields of, psychology and forensics and all of that stuff. So the darkness will always be there, and so will the light, and so will the rising from the crap of that life hands us. So those themes will always be there.
How is writing series books different than writing a standalone?
You got to remember stuff.
Yes.
So that's the thing. There was a big gap between my publishing. I haven't published or written anything in 2 years, like releasing Jagged last month is June.
Yeah.
It's 2 years in the making. It's 2 years in the making. And I don't remember how old anybody is. Do you know how many times I read this book? I wrote the first 75% of it in 2022. I had to read it so many times in order to kind of get to the end to make it feel, together. You have to remember stuff. That's the challenge. For my legacy series, because it was urban fantasy, I have an entire manual of all the rules in the world. I have a rule book for the alternative universe that Jawbreaker was written in. That's important. Urban fantasy, you can't break your own rules. In this type of thing, literary fiction or this type of genre fiction that I'm writing, there's no rule book. You can rewrite the rules every time, but you got to remember when you do that. Like Sally can't be a blonde in book 3.
Right.
She can't do that. I've had to go back and change eye color a few times.
Yep.
Yeah. So I think Nora originally had blue eyes and then had green, or yes. Everybody can't have blue eyes. What are you doing here? No, not everybody can have curly hair, so you have to kind of go back and be consistent. And you have to age people correctly. One trick of the trade is to be as ambiguous as possible. Annette, you were talking about how my books take place in the Pacific Northwest when I am, in fact, from the Atlantic Northeast, I guess, if you're going to just use the same idioms or whatever. I allow enough ambiguity with enough specificity for your mind to fill in the blanks. I am the Gestalt psychology, Gestaltism fills in the blanks. So people are like, well, what does this person look like? I'm like, well, what do you think they look like? I very rarely, unless it's specifically for a reason, say a body size or something like that. I really leave it open to interpretation. So that's a very good trick. Keeping specifics open to interpretation.
Unless there's a reason. That's it. Yeah, it's a good.
Unless there's a reason.
I always thought that people wanted to know at least the basics, what color hair, what color eyes, but you're right. I actually kind of hate having to do that. But there are a few occasions where I have been very specific about an eye color for a reason. Like, Val has cold gray eyes for a reason. She's an assassin.
Cold gray. Yes.
She's an assassin, and her father was a Russian cold-hearted kind of dude. So yeah, there's a reason but most of the time it's like, I'm okay, I have to pick a color and I have to pick whatever. Give just
or my
basics,
serial killer
just to make your readers happy because they want just a little bit of whatever.
Yeah, just a little bit. And then if they're again really specific reason, like everybody knows Rosie is teeny tiny and fair and blonde and everything from that's on purpose. And everybody knows Sally has black hair and blue eyes and some freckles, and so does Harper, and so does Phoebe, and Maggie was close because again, serial killer signatures, those are reasons. And that Sally has some weird human growth hormone deficiency that doesn't make it to the page that keeps her very young looking. So that again comes from
experience. I didn't know that, so you're right, it doesn't make it to the page, and I didn't really know, but I do remember the character being small and young looking, and as somebody who is short and I suppose young looking,
I'm not young. So, and that's the thing, like Sally has that same thing. She's playing teenagers and she's
Yeah.
touching 40, because she can do that. There's this, I don't know, maybe her life story acted as a preservative or something. I don't know. But yeah, everybody unless there's a reason, there's going to be ambiguity. So yeah, that's helpful in a series.
But your 4-point series is how many books now?
The trilogy's the 3 plus the 15 in the universe tie-ins. So what is that? 19. Wait. Yeah, 19.
So what do you do to keep not only yourself as a writer, but your readers engaged in a series that long?
I don't know. I think it's the characters being a little bit different.
Yes.
Each story has a different grouping. It's everything everybody has always wanted. We all want to have this community, especially as people who identify as queer. And in this universe, queer is the majority for the most part in what we see. And then we scatter ourselves a little bit across the Pacific Northwest with some trivia tidbits that reach over to the Northeast in a couple of my other books. But I think it's the community. It's something that people want. They want to have a wild rose and a mermaid salon and a crystal mug cafe and, a university that's open-minded and a police force that is just. That is, Jagger says a quote. Oh, I forget, what did she say? I'm more serve the people, not the law and order type.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
And writing those things, we have people to root for. We have people to hope for.
Yeah.
I guess that's how we keep it engaged and people identifying, like maybe they'll read the next book that they relate to. Maybe it's their story in some way. You never know what I'm going to come up with.
It reminds me of, I don't know if read or heard, you say you don't really read sapphic romance, but Lynn Golly writes characters in a community, and she has these different books in a series where they're all part of this sort of community. And I think it's the same thing. In fact, you're the darker, grittier version of Lynn Golly's series books, and Lynn has a huge following as well, because I think you're right. People really like reading about that community and fantasizing, gosh, I wish I had a group of friends as a part of this big community that's all interconnected, and it feels good. So
yeah, it does. And that's something that we, as a majority of people lack. We're all across the world at times, and tight friend groups move in different directions, especially when you start introducing maturity. So they all start young, and then when they're hitting their 30s and 40s, people are having kids and moving away to be with family, or making their own families, or following jobs across the country. So we lose that as we get older, and people have found themselves quite isolated, especially in the past 5 years or so. So having a book series where it feels like you can come home to family is important.
Yeah. So, you've talked about rising from the ashes, and, you definitely are a character-driven writer. But is there a favorite type of flaw? I mean, you definitely write flawed characters, which is great. They're much more interesting than perfect characters.
Yeah.
What's your favorite type of flaw to write about? Is there, a favorite flaw or a favorite conflict or a favorite type that you like to write about?
I think it's the concept of self, where a lot of the times people are pretty confident in who they are, and then something happens and then they lose the sense of who they are. And that can happen to people transitionally. That's like the original, old school midlife crisis, quarter life crisis, that sort of thing, where people just become different people. I think it's, that fragile sense of self. We can be so confident, and then something takes us at the knees, and we're a shadow of what we once were.
Right.
I feel like that is the human condition. I don't think anyone in the world if they really sat down and thought about it, couldn't say that there was a time when they struggled with feeling connected to themselves, and being open to taking risks and doing something differently. So I think that's the kind of the flaw where somebody has lost the sense of self, doesn't really know what direction they're going in, doesn't trust because of what they've been through. So I think those flaws probably make it to the page more than others. Characters that tend to be very inward, or very outward, even if they are truly inward. Like Sally is an outwardly inward person. We don't actually know anything about her except that she loves for being viewed as an asshole.
Right.
And the more of an asshole she is, the more everyone hates her, which keeps everybody at a distance. But then when you get her in those moments, those quiet moments, she's like, all right, let me tell you what's going on. And she consistently does that, even in Jagged, where she's like, blah, blah, blah. Everybody's like, God, just ignore her. Like, people just ignore the outward because they know the more obnoxious she is, the more pain she has in the inside. And then she would sit down with Jags and be like, look, all right, let's talk this out. And then Jags is like, do you ever not want to be a cop? You know, having these conversations because everybody can see her pain. They can see it. So people who, have a fragile sense of self, who are trying to recover from that loss of who they are. Do they ever truly recover though? That's the question. Like, what does that even mean? We don't know.
Yeah, I Sally is probably one of my favorite characters of the whole series, because she's just so complex.
He's complex.
And as far as does she ever really recover, I think she settles.
She settles. She settles.
Mm-hmm. She becomes less unsettled, I guess, less frantic, less whatever. With
less toxic, less
with Maggie's help, I think is obviously Maggie is a big part of that. That's the love story.
Yes. And I mean, jumping a little ahead with Mercy too. I mean, Mercy's character. Can you imagine Mercy and Sally? What? What? I don't even know. That was a mashup that should have made it to the page because it was just a nightmare. But the same type of thing for Mercy. Mercy found balance when she found Dusty, Dusty is as even as they come.
Yeah.
So having these characters who have a rough sense of self, very rugged, very injured, finding a character who also may have that, but they balance each other out. If you look at everybody as pigments of color, it's that one pigment that mixes well to make another beautiful color. So like red is ridiculous, but when you mix red with a little bit of yellow, it's softer. It's a softer pinkish yellowish. It's more like a sunrise than a bomb going off. So it's like that.
Okay. How much research do you do?
It depends. A lot if it's required, but a lot of the times the stories that I write come from my own interests that I already know about. So not as much as I would need to. Sometimes I have to do research to rule it out. So like when I was creating the serial killer, Scott Clark, I had to make sure there wasn't a serial killer like him with a signature.
Right.
So it was like a rule out research. Yeah. And then when I was writing Entanglement, I was taking a course in quantum physics at the time. So I tried to do the best that I could, but I did not know about nuclear physics as much. So I had to do a bit more research about nuclear physics for one sole reason: to describe Mira as a nuclear reactor and what cools the nuclear reactor, which is the boron, reflective of Chernobyl, how they had to calm the reactor in Chernobyl. So like stuff like that. Yes. So if it's something very specific, I want to get the science right, I will. But usually it's a research to rule out, more so. But most of the information that I share, at least when it comes about psychology forensics, it's actual knowledge that I already have. And then you can tell when I take liberties, because I'll either take a giant liberty that makes no sense or just keep it ambiguous. But yeah, I do a lot of research that doesn't really make it to the page. I just want to make sure I'm right. The medical stuff, again, I have medical experience. Sometimes it gets very specific, where it's like, oh, we got to put in a chest tube. I know we did I caught the ER doctor and rabbits and Stella. I had to get very specific with that. And Ainsley is a medical examiner. Luckily, I have friends who are doctors and medical examiners. So just go and ask them, is this right?
Right.
My wife speaks Portuguese. She's from Portugal. So in this book in Jagged, I wrote a lot of Portuguese. I'm like, is that right? She's like, yeah, no, it's good. I was like, okay, good. I already had asked her, ahead of time. I would be like writing like random. How do you say this? Is this right? And she's like, yep, that's right. Where does the little accent go? Is it on the A or the I? It's just like, okay, it's on the I. So she didn't even know she was helping, but in the end. So I think I write a lot about the experience around me, and then I fact check myself too.
Yeah.
And then ninth degree, whatever it's called.
So
And
you didn't
certainly
do a lot of research about the Pacific Northwest?
No.
Well,
No,
you
just my
nailed
visit.
it. Yeah, I mean,
I did. I mean, when I traveled, I traveled back and forth across the world a few times, many times in my youth, and I did a lot of layovers, long layovers. So I would like stop off up in Seattle and just wander around and then come
Yeah.
back. But geography and it's landmarks. It's geography and landmarks. So once you see it once, if you get it kind of right, people who will fill in the blanks. So now knowing that, if you go back and read some stuff, you're like, oh, that's my brain filling in the blanks there. So
there you go.
yeah, it's
but
pretty
there,
good.
there is I don't know if there's a lavender festival in Sequim, but I could
There
definitely see how there could be because there's lots of lavender in that
Mhm.
area.
Yeah, there is. That one I did research because I knew there was a lavender festival in Sequim, but I had to know what time of the, I don't know, lavender. Where am I growing lavender other than outside on my deck in the summer and it dies? We're in New York. What's going to happen? Lavender doesn't last that long here, but I knew that there was a lavender festival, but I did not know when. So I had to go back in time, and I needed to make it a little bit accurate. And I had to see if it was, what year that they have them, when they don't have them, things like that. So that one took a little bit more research than usual. If it's something specific to that area, I make sure I get it as close and accurate as possible.
Yeah.
I don't want to have folks from Squim being like, we don't have lavender festivals. They might.
No, I would guess that they probably do, and it's in the summer, right? It's
Summer.
sometime,
I
yeah.
think it's around June, July, June or July.
Yeah, I'm guessing it would be. Well, my lavender is just starting to pop up right now, so I'm guessing it would be July, maybe.
Yeah, I think it's probably
Yeah.
July. Yeah, so things like that. If it's specific, yes.
New books on the horizon, especially if they're part of the 4-Point universe.
As far as the 4-Point universe, I don't have any. I do have one plan that I have not written, Infinitum, which is this part of the sub-universe, because it has the Latin name. So Solanum, Nocere, Infinitum. But I haven't gotten in that space where I want to be writing kinky BDSM. That takes a special place of mind. It takes a special mindset. I am working on I have a couple of short stories wandering about. I was going to do a series on Kindle Vella, where I did like stories from the 4-Point universe, but I did not like the direction that Vella was going. So I saved them all. So, I may just put them into a little anthology of my own stuff, and release it like that. It's up there. It would make a little bit of it'd make a small novel size story, I think, at this point. It's probably about 40,000 words. Novella, maybe I'll save up a few more. I have one story that I'm working on. I don't think it'll fit into the 4-Point universe, but it will be a Max Ellendale novel at some point. And a short story that I am writing for DF Krieger's Basset House Publishing. I think I got that wrong. I got the name of her publishing house wrong. She's going to do an anthology. And I Read Indies does anthologies. So I've been tossing some short stories in places. I write much slower than I used to. I would, bang out 90,000 word story in 3 weeks, but life doesn't allow for that as much now as it used to. So we shall see. I do write much slower. There's a mindset about writing that I think that that there's two types of writers. There's the writer that is a writer who is disciplined, skillful, and can write. And then there's the writer who is the feeler, who has to feel and embody, and it is a out of body experience. It's almost a dissociative experience. And that's the type of writer that I am. But in order for that type of writer to thrive, there has to be space for them to check out. So I can check out when I'm writing and I'm gone. I'm off in the universe. I'm living the life of this character. If there's a noise, if there's a sound, if there's another human, if there's breathing, if there's existence in my immediate proximity, I can't do it. I can do it in a crowd for sure, because I'm invisible in a crowd. I am an anonymous, invisible no one. At a library, nobody is going to touch you, bother you, come near you, talk to you. But at home, now it's busier. It's just busier. And there are more people around me. There are more sounds outside. There's not a pandemic. So there's more access. So I definitely write much slower because the amount of time at which that I can dissociate into writing is fragile and small. And half the time there's such gaps between writing that you have to reread what you wrote. And then as soon as you get in, as soon as you sink under, you get one distraction, you're done. At least me. I get pulled out too easily. To me, it is a universe. It's almost a parallel universe, I think. Not to sound too weird, but I'm a little weird as it is. I am able to travel to a parallel universe to write these stories. And if at any point that entry point is disturbed, I come rushing back. And then I can't get back into it. So I write a lot slower because I don't have 2 hours, 3 hours, 4. I used to get in bed at 10 p.m. and start writing and write until I fell asleep, 3 a.m., 4 a.m. That's who I was. Life doesn't allow for that now. It really doesn't. So there are more things on the horizon, but they will be slow. They will be slow. So we'll see. It was end of last year, or beginning of this year, I was considering not writing anymore.
Oh, really? And
Yeah.
why?
Just because of time. It doesn't feel right. I don't want to be a writer that is a disciplined writer. I don't want to write because I should. I want to write because I feel it. I don't want to write because I'm good at it. I want to write because I feel it.
Yeah.
I want to write because it brings me joy, not because, and it brings me a sense of satisfaction and connection and wholeness. I don't want to write because I'm good at it. I don't want to sit down and just write the words. Can I do it? Yes. I've been a writer my whole life and an academic writer. I've written 400-word theses. I've written about the deleterious effects of long-term ethanol exposure on rats and done studies and I can write anything about anything. Doesn't mean I want to. I want to write what I want to write and how in a way that makes me feel it. Because if I don't feel it, my readers won't feel it. And that's the point.
Yeah.
The feeling it is the point. So we shall see. There we go.
Allie, do you have other questions?
And it's been very informative. I can feel your passion for your writing and your conversation with us. And, I look forward to reading some of your books and, getting to know these characters that just sound freaking amazing.
Thank you.
And the 4-point series starts with 4-point, right? That's the name of the book. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's a good one. Because that's the one where you introduced Sally. That's the one that hooked me. Boy, I really wanted to read the rest because she stays a character throughout the series. I mean, she weaves in throughout the series, and so it's nice to see her again and again and again. And I was happy to see her again in Jagged. So
yeah. It's a starter, and 4-point made it across genres. People have read that book outside of the Sapphic community.
Oh, I'm sure.
Above and beyond. It falls into police procedurals, crime, it transcends in a way that I didn't intend it to. I kind of did in the beginning, but I don't intend to now. So sometimes I get feedback on that one. It's like from very different pockets of the literary world. And I'm like, oh wow, that's good. All right, we'll make a TV series. That'd be great. Everybody's like, oh, it would be a great Netflix show. It'd be great.
Would. It actually would.
I was like, it would. I'm not writing the screenplay. That's not doing it. Nope. that's been presented to me a few times for a couple of different was my stories, but
Yeah.
write the screenplay and I'll pitch it. I'm like, no, I'm not writing a screenplay. You want it, you write the screen.
Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Do you have any questions or any closing comments for us?
No, I think this was a great experience. It's been a while since I've done anything recorded, or I did I was in my own podcast. And then they changed the format twice, and now I'm like, I can't deal with this. This is a better format. I like this. Maybe doing this more often, I think would be great. I love speaking to people. I don't know if anybody would listen to a podcast of just myself, a video broadcast of just myself. This is amazing. So I look now I've only in passing seen the work that you both do, and now I'm going to go back and look at them all because I'm like, this is
Yeah,
fun.
there's some interesting conversations. I especially liked our conversation. I don't know, do you have any of your books out on audio?
I don't. They're all text to speech, but I did not have them on audio. It was very hard for me to find an audiobook narrator. I wanted to start from the beginning.
Mhm.
Somebody that can do Sally's voice.
Right.
They can't at all. There was 60 auditions that I turned down.
Wow. Okay.
Because of that. And then after that, it got very expensive. In the beginning, it was contracts that were 7 years and people getting partial royalties for 7 years. And then I'm like, I can't, no, I can't do it. And then it was like 4,000 per book. Absolutely not. At this point, it's probably different now. I haven't looked into it, but everything has text to speech enabled. I don't like the AI thing, but I am a disability advocate, so text to speech is reasonable. Like I allow for your whatever device to just read it. I don't care, whatever, but not an AI robot. But
Yeah.
No, no.
No, yeah, I'm not a fan of the AI robots, but Affinity has just in the last couple of years really gotten into audiobooks and and we're so small. We're such a small publisher that we really had to stick with, we can't afford the Abby Cramdens, the
no way.
Lori Princes of the world. We just can't. There's just no way. It wouldn't pay off. So
It wouldn't, and that's pretty much what my experience. Yeah.
so but I think we found, I mean, I just went and listened to a bunch of people and we've got a number of narrators who I feel pretty good about, really good about actually. They've done, a sort of amazing job. And for the same reason, I don't want our books to be out on Audible to make a whole ton of money. That isn't the purpose. I want it to be so that people who have a hard time reading or can't read or whatever have the ability to experience the books through that format. That's why I'm like, we've been pushing, Allie and I have been pushing, and just recently have just been exploding a bunch of books out on Audible for that reason. And I don't care if they get royalties for 7 years. I mean, in fact, I don't care if I ever make $1 off of it. I'm just glad that it's out there and available for people to listen to.
Yeah, and it makes such a big difference to actually hear your words come to life. And I think we've got some narrators that just do a magnificent job. Being from the South, I have a lot of Southernisms and, and that here and there. And, they, for the most part, they nail it.
Yeah.
And it just, you kind of get lost in listening to it yourself. And it's like, wow, did I really write that? I mean, she makes it sound so good.
It's amazing. I'll have to look into some of them.
Yeah, I mean, I did have to listen to a number though, and then you contact them, and by the time you contact them, no, I'm not doing a 50-50 split anymore. But we've you spend a lot of time and you finally find them or whatever.
Yeah.
So
Everybody's like, you should just read them yourself if you can't find. I said, you know how long it would take me to record a podcast? I trip over my own tongue when I'm saying good morning. Like, I'm like, no, forget it. It's not gonna happen.
Yeah.
I can do. I mean, Sally's voice sounds like mine. I've tried Pacific Northwest readers. I've tried New York-based readers.
Uh-huh.
The intonation isn't there. Sally loses her power as a narrator. But for the 4-Point Universe, I can totally see that one being, if I started in the beginning of 4-Point Universe, it would probably, I wouldn't care. I actually don't. But that's a big commitment to get 15 books to audiobooks. That's a
Yeah.
lot of money.
Yeah, it is.
And it's so
It is.
maybe
It
one
is.
day I'll meet somebody who likes to read aloud and record it.
Yeah.
But I
Or
could,
just, listen to, go to ACX and just listen to a bunch of the different people who are wanting to break in that,
Yeah.
might be good. Anyways. Okay. So I have to do our closing. Don't forget to check out our YouTube channel, AAA Storytelling. But we will be, of course, posting on Facebook, all the different Facebook places that we like to post to. And for one, I've been saving. I've been saving all these audio codes that I get from our publisher. And so I have a bunch that I'm going to be giving out all Pride Month. So anybody who makes a comment on this podcast, we'll put your name in a hat and go ahead and draw several names to give out some of those codes that I've been hanging on to for months now. Anything else you want to add, Max or Allie?
Thank you so much for having me. This was fun.
Thank you so much for being here. It's been a delight. Like I said, I'm a huge fan, and now I have to go back and read all the other books in that other universe because I'm pretty excited about that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. Thank you again.